I'm late to the Fallout 4 party. Bethesda's newest entry into the sprawling role-playing series came out last November, but this is a game so large and so utterly conflicted with itself that there's still plenty of ground to cover. I want to make something clear here. Fallout 4 is not a great game. I'm not even sure if it's a good one. If Fallout 3 marked the successful and generally skilled transition of the franchise into the modern AAA space after years of silence, while New Vegas capitalized on that by putting the series back in the hands of more capable writers and designers, then I'm not sure what the fuck Fallout 4 is doing, because it doesn't merely feel like it takes 2 steps back for every good decision, it actually feels like it's taking mile leaps. I've poured days of my life into this game, days I could have spent doing anything else, and its mediocrity is surpassed only by its general cowardice. This is a genuine shame, because in the moments where Fallout 4 is actually Fallout 4, and not merely an attempt to recreate some sort of Frankenstein Fallout 3, it excels in ways that are generally complex and nuanced. We're going to examine some of the more glaringly awful parts of the game, but I'm also going to try and hone in on the things that work. There will be spoilers. Now is your chance to turn back. Otherwise, we're going to dive right into the start. Fallout 4 is the first game to give us a look at the setting before the Great War that scorched the nation and turned it into a dangerous post-apocalyptic hellscape. By itself, this isn't a bad decision. When the game starts, we're able to see the life our protagonist had before the war. We get to see a happy family and a bright, colorful vision of a world where capital S science made for a fairly idyllic experience. It's actually fairly strong. It's not perfect. There are some pacing issues and a little bit too much convenience. For instance, your character finds out they've been accepted into the nearby vault mere minutes before the bombs drop, and the longest amount of time you spend with your spouse is probably going to be in the character creation screen. This points to a different design philosophy than the games that came before it. Consider something like Fallout 3. Fallout 3 had multiple sequences with your father in order to establish a stronger bond, but Fallout 4 is so eager to get you into the action that it generally doesn't pause for that kind of reflection, which doesn't really help in making your quest or the rest of your gameplay meaningful. Regardless, the bombs drop, and it's a great set piece. You're rushed into the vault and cryogenically frozen, only to wake up and have mysterious figures steal your child, Sean, and kill your spouse. As far as setups go, that's pretty strong motivation, but it does create 2 problems that plague the game. The first is that it frames the main quest as a formal inversion of Fallout 3, an ominous indicator of just how much this game is riding off the high of 2008, and it also has a bit of an issue with roleplay. Now, this might just be me, but with such an intensely personal main quest and such a primal drive as my main motivation, it's actually hard to justify the general wandering and pensive exploration that makes a game like Fallout work. Unlike Fallout 3, which offered little understanding of where your father might be, Fallout 4 makes it pretty clear that the culprit behind Sean's abduction is the Mysterious Institute, their presence itself another callback to Fallout 3 and one of its stronger quest lines, the Replicated Man. This consistent drive forward is a very real problem that discourages players from experiencing the Commonwealth in the same holistic way that they might enjoy the Capital Wasteland or New Vegas's take on the Mojave. This frantic drive forward is clear in the game's first sequence of missions, a crazed progression that leads to a moment of such sound and fury that I questioned whether or not I was playing a Fallout game. So, once you get out of the vault, you find your robot butler Codsworth, who guides you towards Concord, where you find raiders attacking Preston Garvey and a handful of survivors. You rush in, attack, get your first laser weapon in mere minutes, and kill a ton of enemies. And then after that, you're sent to the roof, where you grab your first set of power armor and rip the minigun off of the nearby vertibird. This series of escalations belie Fallout 4's very real fear that it won't be able to grab you on the merits of its world. Don't worry, we'll get to why that fear is justified later on. After you grab the minigun, you jump down, fight some more raiders, and then fight a fucking Deathclaw. A Deathclaw! One of the ultimate enemies of the series, and you're trouncing it with armor and a minigun as low as level 3. I'm not the first person to balk at this, but it really does signal a strong demarcation between Fallout 4 and other titles. One of the earliest quests in Fallout 3 is basically just a test of character. It's a moral choice between accepting Mr. Burke's offer to blow up Megaton or not. The moment existed to set up how your character was going to behave in the Capital Wasteland. It helped you facilitate some roleplay. It was simple, but it worked. Were you going to be good, or were you going to be bad? Similarly, New Vegas's Goodsprings storyline established just how much that game was about the intricacies of interacting social groups within the Mojave. Fallout 4's Deathclaw Killathon? It's nothing more than spectacle, and spectacle for its own sake is just ugly. On a practical level, the game wants to set up power armor. Power armor in Fallout 4 is treated more like a vehicle, and stumbling across even an incomplete power armor frame in the Commonwealth does a great job to making the world feel extant. They're heavy, ever-present pieces of pre-war tech, and it's great. But giving the player access to power armor so early is a serious misstep. It's such a big tonal departure from the rest of the series that all it does is make Fallout 4 seem desperate. This is a major letdown because the plotline then moves into some really great stuff. When functioning at its best, Fallout 4 acts as a strange type of sci-fi noir. This early investigation period into Sean's whereabouts brings you into contact with the game's best character, bar none, a robotic detective named Nick Valentine.
Chin up. I know the night just got darker, but it won't last forever.
Scouring the wasteland in hunt of your son with Nick is a moody, dark, and really somber experience, and it has an amazing payoff when you confront the man who killed your husband, a mercenary named Kellogg. You take a piece of technology from Kellogg's brain and use it to dive into his memory at the aptly named Memory Den. It's a moment that's surreal and quiet. It shows a surprising empathy for Kellogg, and it hits an amazing noir tone thanks to some sublime narration.
Didn't matter to me. I just took it as part of the job. Little extra thrown in for free. I always got paid in the end. One way or another.
Everything is hard-boiled, and it feels considerably different than any other game in the series. Better, the game continues this inward turn by asking you to brave the glowing sea, the area where the single nuke dropped near Boston. It's gloomy, oppressive, and represents some of the best exploration that Fallout has ever offered. These are the moments where Fallout 4 has a true identity. If Fallout 4 has a strength, it's when it's playing off the influences of noir and crime novels and radio dramas. The whimsically comic quest The Silver Shroud is another true joy. In it, you don the costume of this universe's version of the Shadow, dispensing hammy justice alongside a couple bullets from your Tommy gun.
Your crimes have gone unpunished for too long.
It's a great use of nostalgia, calling back to older forms of entertainment in a way that both celebrates them and mocks them. And it's the closest this game comes to truly condemning the pre-war, which is another one of Fallout 4's shortcomings. It doesn't understand that the pre-war is not an ideal to strive for, but the player's quest of reuniting with the remains of their nuclear family is almost explicitly about reclaiming their past and seizing that ideal. In Fallout, it can be argued that the bombs needed to be dropped, that the world was so complacent and stuck and fat on itself that tragedy needed to strike, to wipe the slate clean and give humanity another shot at seeing what it could do and what was possible. Fallout 3's crumbled DC monuments were both a wistful reminder of a world lost, but also a representation of the various structures that allow war to even come to pass. New Vegas's strip highlighted a decadence and lack of appreciation for the wonders that were. The Howard Hughes-like Mr. House held on through centuries on life support, and while you could support him if you believed in his ideology, the game presented him largely as a old-world parasite craving life that should have ended long ago. In Fallout 4, there's no irony to the use of Americana in the Commonwealth. Preston Garvey's Minutemen might be deliciously anachronistic, but we're meant to cheer them on genuinely. We're meant to see something symbolic in a settlement on Bunker Hill, even if the game doesn't really want to make it clear what that iconography is meant to point towards. We walk the Freedom Trail and find the railroad in Old North Church. In his speech during the U.S. Bicentennial, here's what President Gerald Ford had to say while he was there at Old North Church. "Let us pray here that in the Old North Church tonight, that those who follow 100 or 200 years from now may look back at us and say, we were a society that combined reason with liberty and hope with freedom. May it be said above all, we kept the faith, freedom flourished, liberty lived. These are the abiding principles of our past and the great promise of our future." Fallout 4 is soaked in symbols of liberty, revolution, and supposed freedom, but it doesn't want to grapple with the sins of America as a nation in the same way that the rest of the series wanted to. Instead, Fallout 4 seems to want you to be inspired by the relics you find without understanding what those relics point to, both within the fiction of the game and the confines of reality. They don't realize that they point towards ideals that America has struggled with just as much as they've championed in hard times. In a similar fashion, Fallout 4 doesn't understand the icons of its own series or use them to full effect, nor does it want to follow through on many of its themes. Let's look at the Brotherhood of Steel questline for a moment. They come into the Commonwealth to combat the Institute's use of technology. You can ally with them. Now, this part of the game is pretty decent, because as you side with factions, it eventually leads to the game's major plot twist, that the head of the Institute is actually your son, Sean. It's not been 10 years since he was kidnapped, it's actually been 60. Note again how we're finding father, like in Fallout 3, but formally it's a radically different context. This is a good remix. It's amazing stuff, and it begins to introduce us to some real nuance. But if you continue with the Brotherhood of Steel storyline, any implied struggle between you or your son is sidelined in favor of rebuilding Liberty Prime. Yeah, the latter half of the game turns into a goddamn fetch quest so you can get parts for a literal joke character from Fallout 3 to resurrect him and, beat for goddamn beat, play through a version of Fallout 3's ending in Fallout 4. This is Fallout 4 at its most cowardly. This is Fallout 4 at its laziest. This is Fallout 4's core. It says, please love me. I have all the things you previously loved. Please accept me. Look, Liberty Prime. Look, Super Mutants. Don't you love Fallout? Do you remember Fallout 3? The only time this plotline shows any sophistication is when you learn that your comrade Paladin Dance is actually a synthetic human created by the Institute and he didn't even know it. Fallout 4 wants us to take bold stances on what is or isn't human as part of the central conflict. Siding with the Railroad or the Institute is a choice that makes implicit judgments about the nature of artificial life. But whereas a game like Binary Domain might make this a major focus, Fallout 4 just has it in burst. Is Dance human? Can you accept and love the synthetic version of your son when the real, aged version is standing right next to him?
You're telling me you'd leave that kid here to die? He's your son.
He's a synth, Ingram. He's not really my son.
These are good, heavy science fiction questions, but Fallout 4 rushes by them in favor of something like Liberty fucking Prime. It spends more time asking us to work on a robot than it does to ever ask us to consider if people like Nick or Dance are human. And when it does give us the chance to comment, these comments are reductive and simple. It's absolutely terrible. The only highlight comes from a wonderfully existential thesis from Nick.
Everything I ever was belonged to Nick. I'd hoped with winter gone, the last hint of that old world snuffed out, I could finally be free. But being out here with you, what I finally realized after all this time was that taking down winter, it wasn't about Nick or Jenny or even you or me. It was about justice, about doing what's right. And that act of goodness, that's ours. All the good we've done, that's ours, and ours alone. And even if that's the only thing in this world that I can ever claim as mine, not Nick's, not the Institute's, but mine, then I can die happy.
There's one other genuinely good moment of commentary in this game, and it comes right near the end. If you're going up against the Institute, you're going to rig its nuclear reactor to explode in order to destroy their facilities. Part of this is tied to spectacle again. The game wants to offer a nice big flashy moment for its finale, but it also is finally providing comment for the first time in the game, and maybe even the first time in the series, on how war never changes. The continued use of nuclear weapons in the series points to an inherent warlike nature of man, a cycle of violence that they can't escape. Or at least I hope that's what they're being used for, other than giving us big, flashy explosions. You have to push this button even if you don't side with the Brotherhood. This is the solution that most factions come up with when they want to deal with the Institute. They nuke their enemy. And the game offers another really nice formal remix. In this case, it's a remix of the Megaton destruction scene from Fallout 3. There, Tenpenny frivolously used the nuke in Megaton to destroy it because he didn't want to see it on the horizon when he walked out onto his penthouse balcony. Here, we nuke those we ideologically oppose, the people that we see as evil. And by having this moment juxtaposed with the moment in Fallout 3, it shows that the use of nukes, no matter what, is always frivolous and always unnecessary. It's a hell of a thing coming from a game that's otherwise so inconsistent. In the end, Fallout 4 feels like it's at war with itself. It can't decide whether it has something to say to you or not, whether it wants you to follow through on its narrative or break free and explore, whether it wants to be introspective and quiet or loud and needlessly bombastic. It's the series at its best, and the series at its worst, and that conflict is felt throughout every moment of the game. It's fun to play, but frustrating to experience. And I hope that whatever DLC comes next, or whatever side game follows, it takes the series a little bit further, and stops trying to impress me so much, and spends a little bit more time remembering why the series was impressive to begin with. Alright, thank you for watching. This video was made possible by donations and pledges by these wonderful people over at my Patreon. If you are interested in supporting videos like these, please click right here, and I would love your support. It really helps me out, and it's super great. Otherwise, I will see you next month for another video. See you around. See you